In the bustling city of Lagos, there lived a young woman named Adaize. She was smart, beautiful, and full of dreams. One day, while working at an international company, she met Daniel, a tall, kind hearted man from England with curious green eyes and a laugh that made people feel at home. They became friends first, laughing over lunch breaks and sharing secrets after long workdays. Friendship turned to love, and soon they were inseparable. But there was one problem Ades could not shake: her family back in the village. They were traditional, proud, and expected her to marry a proper African man. In secret, Ades promised herself, one day I would tell them, but not yet. Months turned into a year. Daniel proposed to Ades under the big mango tree where they first confessed their love. She said yes, tears streaming down her cheeks. They moved into a cozy apartment, blending their lives like pepper soup and sweet yam. Daniel loved Nigerian culture. He danced at Owambe parties, ate a jollof rice with his hands, and even learned to greet elders properly. Adai smiled proudly, but inside, fear twisted her heart. Every call from home ended the same. When are you bringing your husband? Adai? She would laugh and change the subject, feeling guilt sink deeper into her bones. Back in her village of Umuahia, Adaezi's family waited eagerly. Her mother, Mama Ifioma, had already sewn a wedding wrapper. Her father, Papa Ejike, bragged to his friends, "My daughter will bring home a strong Igbo man." The whole village buzzed with excitement. Every festival, every new moon, they asked, when will Ades come home with her man? But Ades made excuse after excuse. Her stomach knotted every time she thought about it. She knew deep down that introducing Daniel would not just shock her family, it might break their hearts. And so she kept delaying, weaving a bigger web of silence around her secret life. One humid afternoon, Adaisy sat at her office desk sipping cold zobo when her phone buzzed. It was Mama Ifeoma. Adaisy hesitated before answering, heart thudding. "My daughter," Mama said warmly, "the elders have chosen the date for your introduction ceremony. It is time you bring your husband home." Adaisy's hands trembled slightly. "Introduction ceremony," she stammered. "Yes, my dear. The whole village is waiting. Your father has even invited the chief. You cannot delay anymore." Adaisy forced a laugh, saying she would call back. But when she hung up, she buried her face in her hands. How could she explain that the man she loved, her future husband, was not what they expected? That he was white, that he spoke no Igbo, wore no native wrapper, and danced like a clumsy goat. Later that evening, Daniel came home whistling, carrying a surprise, 2 tickets. "Guess what?" he said, eyes sparkling. "I booked us flights to visit your family. I want to finally meet them." Adaise's smile froze. She watched Daniel's excitement, how he practiced Igbo greetings, how he planned to wear a traditional agbada. He loved her so openly, so purely. He had no idea of the storm waiting for them. Adais nodded slowly, hiding her fear. "It's time," she whispered. Daniel hugged her tight. While Adaise's mind raced, she wondered if love alone could shield them from what was coming. In the corner of her heart, a small voice whispered, "Prepare yourself for anything." The next morning, Adaise called Mama Ifioma again. "Mama," she said cautiously, "the man I want to marry, he is different. He is not from here." Mama Ifioma laughed warmly. "Is he from another state? Edo, Delta? It doesn't matter. Love crosses rivers, my daughter." Adaise swallowed. "He's from far away, from England." The line went silent. "England? Mama finally said, voice tight. Yes, Mama, he is good, kind, and he loves our ways. There was a heavy pause. Then Mama said, you must still come. The elders will decide. And just like that, Adaeze knew there was no turning back. The sun blazed high in the sky as Adaeze and Daniel drove towards Umuahia. The roads twisted and turned, dust rising behind their car like a red mist. Daniel gazed out the window, fascinated by the colorful markets, the children chasing after tires, the women balancing baskets on their heads with perfect grace. Adaeze gripped the steering wheel tightly, her mind a whirlpool of worry. At every checkpoint, curious eyes peered at Daniel, some smiling, some frowning. Are you sure they'll like me? Daniel asked, squeezing her hand. Adaeze forced a smile. They will try, she said quietly. In her heart, she prayed the ancestors would watch over them. As they approached the village square, word spread like wildfire. Adaeze is back, and she brought a white man. People poured out of their huts, some dropping their pesos mid-pound, others leaving pots boiling over. Children ran alongside the car, pointing and laughing. Old women peered out from behind wrappers, whispering to one another. At the family compound, Papa Ejike stood tall, arms crossed, a serious look on his face. Mama Ifeoma hurried forward, wiping her hands on a wrapper, heart racing. Daniel stepped out first, offering a nervous smile and a respectful bow. Silence swallowed the air, so thick you could slice it with a knife. Then Mama Ifeoma, voice trembling, said, no, welcome. It was not warm. It was not angry. It was simply strained. Inside the compound, mats were laid out and chairs were arranged in a half circle. Family elders had gathered, men with heavy walking sticks, women with beads around their necks. Daniel greeted each elder respectfully, bowing low the way Adaeze had taught him. Some nodded stiffly, others simply stared. Papa Ejike barely spoke, his face carved in stone. Mama Ifeoma served bitter cola and palm wine, her hands shaking slightly. Whispers filled the air. Why a white man? Is there no good man in Nigeria? Adaeze sat beside Daniel, her back straight, her face calm, though inside her heart thundered against her chest. She knew the next few days would decide everything. Love, loyalty, family, and maybe even her future. Later that evening, the elders gathered under the old Iroko tree at the center of the compound. Lanterns swung gently in the breeze, throwing long dancing shadows across their serious faces. Adaeze and Daniel sat on low stools, hands clasped tightly together. Papa Ejike cleared his throat and spoke first. In our tradition, he said, marriage is not just between two people. It is between two families, two bloodlines. An old uncle, his voice rough with age, added, can this man even understand our ways, our respect, our burdens? Daniel, not understanding the Igbo language, simply smiled politely. Adaeze quickly translated, choosing her words carefully to soften the blows. The meeting dragged on, voices rising, emotions swirling like a storm. By the end, Papa Ejike delivered the verdict. We will not reject him outright, but he must prove himself worthy of you and of us. The next morning, before the rooster had even crowed 3 times, Daniel was called to the village square. Papa Ejike announced the test. If you want to marry Adaeze, he said, you must live among us for 7 days. Eat what we eat, work how we work. No city comforts, no special treatment. Daniel, to everyone's shock, nodded eagerly. I am ready, he said in broken Igbo, making some villagers chuckle for the first time. That day, Daniel fetched water from the stream, helped pound yam, and learned to weave raffia mats with the old women. Adaise watched him with pride and growing fear. Would he survive this test? Would he still want her after seeing this other side of her life? Days passed slowly. Daniel stumbled and fell carrying firewood. He burnt his hands stirring hot ogbono soup. He got blisters on his feet from walking barefoot on the dusty roads. But he never once complained. He laughed at himself, learned from every mistake, and treated every elder like royalty. Slowly, the villagers' hearts began to soften. Children followed him around, calling him Oyibo brother. Women smiled when he danced clumsily to the talking drums. Even Papa Ejike, hard as he was, began to nod approvingly from his chair. Adaise felt hope blooming again inside her chest. Maybe, just maybe, love could win after all. On the sixth day, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, Adaise sat alone by the river bank, watching the orange sky melt into purple. Her cousin, Amaka, slept quietly beside her. "Sister," Amaka said, her voice low. "Be careful." Adaise turned sharply. "What do you mean?" she asked. Amaka sighed, staring at the rippling water. "Not everyone smiles truly. Some elders still say you have brought shame. They believe a white man cannot understand the spirit of our ancestors." Adaise's heart dropped. "But he has tried," she whispered. "Yes," Amaka said, "but sometimes trying is not enough in the eyes of tradition." As Amaka walked away, Adaise felt the weight of generations pressing down on her. Would her love ever be enough to break through years of unspoken rules? On the seventh morning, Daniel was summoned again. This time, the elders gathered in full regalia, red caps, ivory bracelets, wrappers shining in the sun. Papa Ejike stood at the center. "You have walked among us," he said gravely. "But before we can bless this union, you must answer one question. Why do you want to marry our daughter?" Silence fell. Adaise's heart pounded in her chest. Daniel stepped forward, voice steady. "Because when I look at Adaise," he said, "I see a woman whose spirit is stronger than any I have known. She taught me to love her people, her land, her ways. I do not just love her. I respect her." A murmur rippled through the crowd. No arrogance, no begging, just truth. For the first time, Papa Edike's eyes softened. Later, while the men debated under the Iroko tree, Mama Ifeoma pulled Adaise aside. Tears shone in her mother's wise old eyes. "My daughter," she said, holding Adaise's hand tightly. "We raised you to honor our ways, but we also raised you to follow your heart." Adaise wept silently, laying her head on her mother's shoulder like she had as a child. Mama Ifeoma whispered, "If he is your peace, then he is your home." In that moment, Adaise knew, whatever the elders decided, she had already made her choice, and this time she would not hide it from the world. That evening, the villagers gathered again under the great tree. The drums were silent. The air was thick with expectation. Papa Ejike rose slowly, leaning heavily on his carved staff. He looked at Adaise, then at Daniel. "The ways of our people are strong," he said, his voice deep and steady. "But the heart of a child is stronger when it beats in truth." The elders nodded, some reluctantly. "We will not stand in the way of your happiness," Papa Ejike declared. A collective sigh, half relief, half disbelief, swept through the crowd. Adaise felt her knees buckle slightly. Daniel caught her hand and squeezed it tightly. The village griot began to sing a soft, ancient song, one reserved for rare, important blessings. That night, Daniel had a surprise. Under the soft light of lanterns and stars, he knelt before Adaise again. But this time, it was not in the polished gardens of Lagos or beneath the mango tree. It was on the dusty red earth of her ancestors. In his hand, he held a simple gold ring. No diamonds, no glitter. Just pure, quiet love. Ades, he said, voice thick with emotion. Will you marry me in front of your family, your people, your home? Tears flooded her eyes. She nodded fiercely, too overwhelmed to speak. Cheers erupted from the women who had been hiding and peeking from nearby huts. Children danced in circles. Even the elders smiled. Small smiles, but real ones. The next day, the whole village transformed. Palm fronds lined the roads, pots of sweet stew and fresh pounded yam bubbled over open fires. Drummers pounded out rhythms that made the air itself dance. Ades wore a beautiful red and gold wrapper, her hair adorned with coral beads. Daniel wore a well-fitted agbada, looking every inch the son of the soil. Hand in hand, they walked proudly through the village square, surrounded by laughter, music, and blessings. No more secrets, no more shame. As they danced into the sunset, Adais realized something. She had not only found a husband, she had found the courage to live a truth out loud without fear. A few days after the celebration, Adaeze sat under the same old Iroko tree, writing letters, not emails, not text messages, but real letters with paper and ink to her aunts, her cousins, even her late grandfather's old friend. She wrote of love, of choice, of bravery. She wrote of how Daniel learned their songs, respected their stories, honored their struggles. With every word, she wove a bridge between the old and the new, a bridge that many feared would break, but now stood strong and steady. By the time she folded the last letter, Adaisy realized she was no longer a girl caught between two worlds. She had become a woman who could hold both and lose neither. That evening, Daniel joined her under the stars, carrying a small hand-carved box. Inside, there was a simple bead necklace crafted by the village women. I want our children to know this place, he said, placing it gently around their neck. They must know where their mother comes from. They must know her pride, her strength. Adai smiled, her heart swelling. You are part of this now too, she whispered. They sat together in silence, listening to the distant beat of drums. A sound that no longer felt foreign to him, but familiar, like a heartbeat he had always known, but never heard until now. The next morning, before they left for Lagos, Adais and Dania visited the ancestral shrine. Papa Eike led them, walking slowly, solemnly. At the shrine, Adaise knelt and offered a prayer, not asking for permission, but giving thanks. Thanks for the courage to love. Thanks for the strength to stand. Daniel knelt beside her, bowing low in respect. The old priest sprinkled water over their heads, blessing their union with whispered words older than memory. As they rose to their feet, the rising sun bathed them in golden light. Adi smiled at Daniel. Their journey was just beginning, but it was beginning the right way, together, boldly, with roots planted deep in love. Back in the buzzing city of Lagos, life moved faster. Cars honked, people rushed, buildings kissed the sky. But Adas and Daniel moved slower now, savoring every moment. Their apartment, once a simple space, now felt different. It carried the spirit of the village with it. Colorful wrappers hung on the walls. A carved stool from Papa Ejike's compound stood proudly in the corner. The aroma of egusi soup simmered from the kitchen, filling the air with memories. Friends came to visit, old schoolmates, work colleagues, neighbors, curious, excited, and joyful. Nobody asked why she chose Daniel. When they saw them together, laughing easily, moving like two sides of the same coin. They simply understood. Months later, Mama Ifeoma and Papa Ejike visited Lagos for the very first time. They stepped off the bus wide-eyed, taking in the tall glass buildings and endless traffic. Daniel met them at the station, bowing low, greeting them in broken but heartfelt Igbo. Mama Ifeoma laughed warmly, fixing his collar like he was her own son. At their home, they sat together. Daniel, Adas, Mama, and Papa, eating pounded yam and laughing over old village stories. When Papa Ejike raised his cup in a toast and said, "To family, to love without borders," Adaze's eyes brimmed with tears. The girl who once hid her heart had now built a home where love spoke louder than fear. Years later, Adaz and Daniel sat under another old tree, this time in a quiet park. There are two small children playing at their feet. Their daughter, cheeks round and bright like her grandmother's, tugged at Adaize's wrapper. "Mama," she asked, "how did you and Papa meet?" Adaize smiled at Daniel, who winked at her. She drew her children close and began. "Once upon a time, a girl was afraid to tell the world about the man she loved. But then she learned that love, real love, is not meant to be hidden. It is meant to be celebrated, just like the rising sun that touches every corner of the earth, no matter how far. And under the wide open sky, surrounded by laughter, by family, and by memories stitched with courage, Adaeze's story lived on. A story not of fear, but of fearless love.